Doesn't this prove that what we're doing up there is absolutely insane?
Top Gun Maverick is filled with incredible stunts, which, of course, you know by now aren't CGI. But did you know the stunts were so dangerous they even had the real aviators scared?
That's what Top Gun's been doing for years, making grown men cry.
Number 1. How could anybody say no to Tom Cruise? Cruise is a licensed pilot, and he's flown a P-51 propeller-driven fighter plane and some helicopters. But the Navy denied him permission to fly an F-18 fighter jet. So that wasn't him piloting the crazy stunts. He was in the back seat. Actually, all of the actors were. And were doing their lines at the same time. Director Joseph Kosinski said probably the most dangerous and daring is in the middle of the film where Maverick flies the course to prove the mission can be flown. For that sequence, Tom went through the real Top Gun low-level training course at less than 50 feet above the ground at 500 miles per hour. The plane was so close to the ground that it was stirring up dust and making the cameras on the ground shake. Aerial coordinator Kevin LaRosa II said, "When you see them flying low over terrain in between valleys dogfighting, that's really our cast." Number 2. Mountain stunts are stunning. Unfortunately, Miles Teller was stunned in a different way.
When they go over a mountain peak, they don't go over like this. As soon as they get to the top, they go inverted.
Well, Teller didn't strap himself in tight enough and was lifted out of his seat when the jet inverted. He hit his head against the canopy. And that shot made it into the final cut of the film.
It's in the movie, actually. I hit my head on the canopy, and I thought it was an unusable take.
Not that they go looking for mistakes to happen, but when they do, they're unrepeatable gold. Number 3. Imagine having allergies and being burned by Tom Cruise at the same time. Poor Teller wasn't having a great time on set. Like, sure, flying in airplanes is awesome, but between hitting his head and now blood poisoning, he just can't catch a break. Teller says, "We landed and I'm just like, man, I'm not feeling too good. I was really hot and I just started itching like crazy. So I get out of the jet and I'm just covered in hives, like head to toe. Instantly I go to a doctor. I do like a blood analysis, this, that, whatever. I'm in an oatmeal bath at night." So he goes to tell Cruise about his experience.
Well, Tom, it turns out I have jet fuel in my blood.
And Cruise's response is legendary.
Tom just goes, "Yeah, I was born with it, kid."
It wasn't just jet fuel, though. He also had flame retardant and pesticides in his blood. That flame retardant should help with that sick burn, though. Number 4. On top of blood poisoning and whacking his head, Teller also wet himself. Okay, not really, but he did have one moment in the F-18 Hornet jet where he thought he was a goner. He admitted, "There was a sequence where we were heading straight towards the ground, and you do what's called a max G pull-up. You're heading down, and at the last second you yank up, and it's really tough for the pilot. It's something they train in all the time, but it was the first time we'd done a maneuver like that, and I completely stopped acting. I looked at the ground and thought, this wasn't going to end well for me." Number 5. It's safe to say any stunt in a plane is dangerous, but this one is pretty nerve-wracking. They were actually flying in the mountains with very little room for error.
I mean, the mountains are less than 100 feet off each wingtip.
And there's cloud cover sometimes, too. Number 6. Just one of the many times the actors would lose their lunch was the upside-down shots. But Monica Barbaro was a natural at that, due to her dance training, saying, "There was a funny moment where a couple of the guys were saying they hated going upside down, and I was like, I've been going upside down forever. I would do handstands before flights. It helped me control some of the weird feelings of blood rushing to spaces you don't usually want it to." Number 7. During Monica's callback audition, she did a little oopsie and lied to the director. Upon being asked if she was a strong swimmer, he's like, "Can you swim?" I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "You're a comfortable swimmer?" I was like, "Yeah," lying. They all did a ton of swim training, just in case they needed to eject over water. But this is next level water training. The actors were being pushed off a high-rise and fell into a pool and had to unstrap their parachutes. And there's one drill where the wind was pushing the parachute across the water. Man, was Monica ever in over her head. Luckily, she got to spend a ton of extra time in the water training. Number 8. Just imagine if this movie didn't get made because Tom couldn't be bothered to put a helmet on. We know it's a dorky thought, but seriously, for somebody who's so into health and safety on a plane, he kinda lets all that fly out the window when it comes to his motorbike. Maybe that's because bikes don't have windows. Number 9. The roof isn't on fire, but it isn't attached either. In the opening scene, Maverick flies over Ed Harris, and it rips the roof off of the shack, thanks to the force of the jet's takeoff.
Watch, it rips the roof off the guard shack. That was not planned.
Director Kaczynski knew, at that moment, that there was no need to rebuild the set, because that take was the only one they needed.
That was a one-take thing where we destroyed the set, and that's the only shot we got.
Well, that could have been a whole lot more dangerous, but luckily, the roof didn't fly too far. Number 10. You've got to be prepared for things to go wrong. That's the difference between an amateur and a pro. So they did a controlled stall where they turn off the engine and you're free falling.
It got pretty real pretty quick, to be honest with you.
Number 11. Training is just controlled danger. Boot camp training happened with the Navy and the Top Gun school to formulate how to shoot the movie practically. The actors started out flying in single-engine airplanes to build out their spatial awareness inside the aircraft. Next, they went in the L-39 and went and flew aerobatics to feel what it's like in a jet. Tom Cruise developed the flight training program that the actors needed to go through.
So he designed a program that would get them as ready as they could be.
The boot camp took 3 months, and the actors had to develop skills in underwater evacuation, aerial aviation, and flight. One thing in particular made these flying scenes dangerous, and that's the dynamic pressure of the G-force that can cause a lack of blood supply and make pilots go unconscious. Kevin said, "I like to attribute it to something similar to muscle memory, so it's a tolerance that you build up. And that's what Paramount and Cruise made with this pilot training program, to acclimate them and build up the G-tolerance, and build up their fatigue levels. Without that, there wouldn't have been a movie." In the original Top Gun, a stunt pilot named Art Scholl fatefully plunged into the Pacific Ocean after his Pitts S2 camera plane failed to recover from a spin. He suffered the same fate as the character Goose. So when you're filming a sequel with a history like that, you'd better take every precaution. Number 12. Lots of injuries, sweat, and vomit went into the making of Top Gun. Actually, Tom Cruise was all too familiar with that G-force feeling, because in the first movie, he vomited in his helmet, which is most definitely why he did the boot camp. Every minute of extreme motion sickness while filming is money wasted. Before Cruise signed on to star in the original Top Gun, he took a test flight in a jet. He was flying at 6.5 Gs and felt the blood drain from his head. He vomited in his fighter pilot mask, and he learned from that to squeeze his thighs and abs to stay conscious. Kevin said, "There's no pulling over on the side of the road when you're in a 50,000-pound FA-18 doing 500 knots in a canyon. You're in it." Let's be real, pretty much everybody except for the dancer vomited at least once. In the original movie and in the sequel. Top Gun Maverick outdid itself. Truly, there were a ton of close calls, but we're just glad no one was injured too bad for the sequel. Would you set foot in an F-18 fighter jet given the risks? Passenger or pilot? Let us know in the comments, and thanks for hanging out with us here at The Things.